The Youth Programming Assessment Tool, also known as the YPAT, was created in 2018 upon the realization that although there are many types of organizational capacity assessments, there are few that helped organizations assess their technical performance, especially in terms of youth programming. The YPAT aims to promote reflection on key program staff and youth participants and generate data to inform program improvement. It can be used by any organization that targets youth aged 10 to 29, no matter the sector. The tool includes 19 standards for youth programming based on evidence and best practice. Youth organizations score themselves using specific benchmarks along a 1 to 4 rating scale that also includes real-life examples to help organizations better understand how to operationalize positive youth development approaches and identify concrete steps for improvement. There are 4 main sections of the YPAT. The first 3 are based on USAID's Positive Youth Development Framework, with specific standards related to the 4 categories or domains of the framework: assets and agency, contribution, and enabling environment. Under the assets and agency section, organizations can learn more about how to effectively develop youth skills and improve their staff's facilitation practices. Under contribution, standards provide examples on ways to engage youth in program design, implementation, and decision-making, and empower youth to contribute more to their communities. And under enabling environment, standards share benchmarks and examples on how to create a safe and empowering environment for youth. The 4th section provides a youth lens and some standards typically included in organizational capacity assessments, such as ensuring youth are represented on the board and included as part of the organization's monitoring and evaluation processes. A unique aspect of this assessment is that it not only provides standards on how organizations can do better youth engagement, but also models this behavior by providing organizations with a structured way to receive diverse youth feedback. Youth will first participate in reflection groups that serve as a safe space for youth to independently share their experiences and perspectives, with representatives then included as part of the full assessment committee and action planning process. Organizations often cite this intentional process for youth engagement as having the greatest impact on the organization's culture and programming. You can find more information in the full toolkit at www.ypat.shi360.org.
Je m'appelle Claude-Marie Nézéocé. Je travaille au sein du projet Activités de l'USAID pour le développement intégré des jeunes, dans lequel FHI 360 s'emploie à aider les jeunes à s'engager civiquement dans leur communauté. Et pour y arriver, nous travaillons avec 8 associations locales qui s'occupent des jeunes, mais qui n'ont pas tous les atouts nécessaires pour pouvoir mettre sur pied des activités qui répondent effectivement aux besoins des jeunes. C'est ainsi que lorsque nous leur avons présenté l'outil YPAT, elles se sont exclamées avec joie: « Waouh, maintenant nous savons comment nous y prendre !» Parce qu'auparavant, nous pourrions comparer notre action à ce que font certains parents qui achètent des habits à leurs enfants sans prendre au préalable leur mensuration et qui au finish ne leur convenaient pas. C'est ainsi que nous avons commencé par leur expliquer l'outil YPAT pour que ces associations ne le prennent pas comme un instrument de sanction, mais plutôt un instrument d'auto-évaluation aidant à améliorer le travail en intégrant davantage les besoins et les aspirations des jeunes dans la planification et l'exécution des activités. Et nous remarquons qu'après que ces associations ont fait l'analyse YPAT en intégrant les jeunes, elles ont commencé à programmer, à mettre en œuvre des activités et des actions qui donnent de bons résultats et de bons impacts en étant de plus en plus près des jeunes et de leurs besoins. Merci.
De bien exprimer nos besoins, de critiquer la manière de faire de l'organisation et de donner des suggestions. Voilà pourquoi YPAT a été un bon moment pour nous. C'est en ce sens que nous avons donné des recommandations au staff ASADEC de la manière dont l'organisation sera en train d'agir à notre faveur. Nous pensons que ASADEC a adopté un comportement aussi positif en faveur des jeunes. C'est-à-dire, SCS a pris en compte tout ce que nous avons suggéré. Et personnellement, j'ai quelques éléments à indiquer par rapport à cela. notamment le fait que les relations d'abord entre jeunes et staff à SADC sont devenues de plus en plus.
I'm Jocelyn Nieva, a senior legal advisor for Latin America and the Caribbean with the International Center for Not-for-Profit Law. Many countries have recently imposed restrictive new laws regulating civil society organizations, provisions that make it more challenging and costly to register, submit mandatory reports, and receive and spend funds. These new laws reflect countries' efforts to meet standards set by the Global Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, to prevent CSOs from being misused for terrorism financing. What Latin American CSOs hadn't realized was that the FATF standards underlying these restrictive new laws have been significantly improved following civil society advocacy. Now, FATF calls on countries to regulate CSOs in a proportionate way based on evidence of risk of abuse for terrorism financing, rather than through sweeping laws applied to all organizations simply because they are nonprofits. FATF also requires countries to implement these laws consistently with their obligations to protect and promote the right to freedom of association and other human rights, and through sustained dialogue with CSOs. The Spanish language FATF toolkit for CSOs aims to bridge this knowledge gap, to demystify the FATF standards related to the sector and prepare CSOs to assess those laws, to push back on excessive regulations, and to demand a seat at the table. The Plain Language Toolkit, now available in English too, offers strategic guidance to CSOs on why, when, and how to engage with their governments and with FATF. It helps users anticipate and respond to inaccurate statements about the standards and CSO risk of terrorism financing abuse, and more. We are delighted that you will hear from a Peruvian partner on how his organization used the FATF Toolkit. You can find the toolkit at www.icnl.org.
Luis Castillo Paulino, ¿no? Soy asesor legal, abogado, miembro de la Asociación Nacional de Centros, que afilia a las organizaciones no gubernamentales en el Perú, ¿no? Diría que ha habido dos ámbitos en los que hemos aprovechado los elementos de esa caja. En la caja de herramientas se precisaban algunas formas de entrada a esa negociación y desde nuestra percepción, ¿no? Sobre todo enfatizando en el reconocimiento de la sociedad civil como un actor clave, ¿no? Para la participación y para también el aporte, ¿no? Al desarrollo, que todo ello que implique sin duda la protección del Estado, pero también el derecho a la libertad de asociación. Al punto que nos permitió llegar a acuerdos, ¿no? Llegar a acuerdos en un sector que no está en el país acostumbrado a tener acta de reuniones con sociedad civil o llegar a tener una agenda de puntos, incluso de llegar a un acuerdo o a una ayuda a memoria. Creo que fue exitosa la negociación con la unidad de inteligencia. Llegamos a puntos de acuerdo, se formalizaron a través de una ayuda a memoria, y eso nos ha servido para el seguimiento, ¿no? De los compromisos adquiridos sobre todo por la unidad de inteligencia, ¿no? En lo que se refiere a la modificación de algunas normas, ¿no? Y luego la caja de herramientas creo que nos ayudó a comprender mejor el marco teórico, ¿no? Ese marco teórico nos sirvió inclusive no solamente para los talleres de capacitación que realizamos en el país para desarrollar la normativa y hacer una labor de concientización, ¿no? Con el sector no lucrativo en las regiones del Perú, sino también nos sirvió inclusive para la presentación del sector no lucrativo y cómo también ya se había adecuado a la normativa con las regulaciones que existían. Entonces, a la unidad de inteligencia nos fue posible presentarles el sector, ¿no? La importancia de ella, cómo ha venido aportando también en el tema del lavado de activos y contra el financiamiento del terrorismo, además de nuestra intervención en otras áreas, en otros ámbitos de desarrollo nacional. Capacitamos a cerca de 40 funcionarios de la SBS, ¿no? participando ahora inclusive en la Evaluación Nacional de Riesgos, ¿no? Que ya inició la Unidad de Inteligencia Financiera en el Perú, ¿no? Y todo está encaminado con la participación de la sociedad civil.
Hi everyone, I'm Megan McLean-Scanlon. I'm a consultant who focuses on civil society and social systems strengthening and worked with FHI 360 and USAID to develop a guide on local philanthropy and self-reliance. SCS Global released the 10-page document in March 2020. Local philanthropy offers a platform for financing of development locally and is an important mechanism of a society's journey to self-reliance. Local Philanthropy and Self-Reliance, the guide, unpacks the concept of local philanthropy and its components of community philanthropy, corporate philanthropy, and individual giving. The guide also delves into assets, capacities, and trust, pillars that make local philanthropy so potentially impactful for the journey to self-reliance. The guide provides an overview of ways that USAID missions can foster local philanthropy in their partner countries, including up-to-date ideas, information, and suggested resources and materials. Throughout, examples appear of programs that integrated attention to various aspects of local philanthropy. Local philanthropy and self-reliance was the focus of a virtual panel discussion and audience Q&A on the untapped power of local philanthropy, hosted by USAID's then Center for Democracy, Human Rights, and Governance. The guide and the panel discussion had USAID missions in mind as their primary audience, though the information and resources included are useful for a wide range of civil society and implementing partners as well. The guide on local philanthropy and self-reliance can be found at ngoconnect.net/resource/local philanthropy and self-reliance, with hyphens connecting the words local philanthropy and self-reliance. Or a web search for USAID Learning Lab Local Philanthropy should return links to the guide and a recording of the panel discussion on USAID's Learning Lab. Thanks for listening, and I hope you find the guide useful.
So, in terms of how the Local Philanthropy Guide might inform some of USAID's work, it helps us to reflect on whether what we're doing to carry out specific projects and work with local partners is also furthering local philanthropy by giving us an understanding of what that means, and helps us apply an ecosystem lens to understand our partners as they relate to the variety of stakeholders around them. So we may still be pursuing our normal ways of supporting grant making and doing work, but we will be doing this a little bit more mindfully of the principles of local philanthropy and how that can feed into our work. So some specific examples of that, we can probably do a better job focusing on relationships. There was a great example in Macedonia where they did kind of a matchmaking process. And overall, I think we can be brokering connections between partners as part of how we do support, which we know contributes to relationships and trust building over time. Similarly, when we're trying to support civil society organizations and we want them to be more sustainable, nudging them to get out the door with things like matching grants, to go find out what folks in their community would provide support for, is really helpful and is probably more useful than helping them work on fundraising plans or something of that nature. And to the extent possible, reserving some of our resources for local control and local input to model the community philanthropy process with our partners. Not always possible, but it's great when we can reserve some funding and make it available for targets of opportunity or priorities that are set within local communities within the broad objectives of our grant making. So those are all some ways where I hope that the Local Philanthropy Guide will help us in our work.
Hi, everyone. I'm Theo Dolan with FHI 360's Civil Society and Peace Building team. In our work around the world with local organizations that are preventing and countering violent extremism, we understand from them that they struggle to find the right resources and tools to help them do their work on PCVE more effectively. That's why we've developed the online Countering Violent Extremism reference guide for local organizations, which consolidates resources, tools, and reports for local organizations to do their PCVE work more effectively. The online CVE reference guide for local organizations can be found at www.scs.org/guide. www.cvereferenceguide.org. Based on our conversations with local organizations working to prevent and counter violent extremism, we've designed the guide to be easy to use through 5 key modules related to the PCVE project cycle: assess, design, implement, monitor and evaluate, and learn. Most local organizations will start with the Get Started page, where they can find definitions and an introduction to conflict sensitivity. In our discussions with local organizations, many identify the need to learn more about monitoring and evaluating. So in this case, we can look at that module and learn about logical frameworks, risks and assumptions, and indicators, among other aspects. The cross-cutting sections introduce how to interact with youth, how to integrate conflict sensitivity and do no harm into their work, how to include all genders, and how to engage different groups of stakeholders such as civil society and government. If a local organization needs more resources, they can go to the resource library, where they have access to more than 300 toolkits, guides, reports, and web pages on the topic of their choice. Among the tools we offer in the CVE reference guide for local organizations are a series of worksheets, and they are presented in each of the modules. So for example, if we look at the assessment process in the assess module, we'll find a worksheet on VE drivers. So if you click on this worksheet, it will take you through the process of preparing a VE assessment to inform your PCVE project. To highlight how the guide is used, we'll now hear from some of our civil society partners from different countries around the world.
Preventing violent extremism is a challenging field when you need the information and the knowledge about the specific tools, how we better engage in the communities, and also how we monitor and evaluate our work. But having the information is not always easy to access. CV Reference Guide is a unique opportunity for both practitioners and the people engaged in the theoretical field of preventing violent extremist radicalization to have an access to the different chapters and the different topics that is necessary while we work on the PCV.
The making of the CVE manual makes it quite distinctive because it was not just made by a set of experts, it was made by experts and it was co-owned by different experts across the world. We all had the opportunity to contribute, to make comments, and it gives us a sense of ownership of the manual. Importantly also, the CDD has actually used this manual in its training in Northeast Nigeria. And we have also referred our partners to the manual.
My work as a trainer on preventing violent extremism has encountered challenges in terms of content creation, especially when training grassroots communities. The CVE reference guide has really helped my work and made it more easier, especially in the popularization and also the evolving of the Mombasa County Action Plan on preventing and countering violent extremism. It has also helped in development of scripts for participatory educative theatre and arts for social change in the community.
As you've heard from our civil society partners, violent extremism is constantly changing. And so we've worked with them to produce this adaptable online guide to help them do their work more effectively.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Enser with Internews. I'm really excited to be here today to introduce you to this new resource that we've developed together with ICNL and FHI 360 as one of the SCS Global Learning Products. When we think about the vast implications of digital technology in our work, we'd really like to think it's used every day to try and create a more just and peaceful world. But how do we really ensure that we are using digital technologies in ways that will support and not undermine the development solutions that we all care about? CivicSpace.tech is an interactive resource for anyone who might be using or interested in using digital technologies in the democracy, rights, and governance space. There are so many kinds of technologies that are relevant to our work, and it can be really overwhelming to consider how best to use or not use the different technologies. If you work for civil society, you're a donor, local governments, or within the development sector, this resource is meant to be a helpful place to turn to not only learn the basics, but to more deeply think about interacting with and deploying digital technologies more consciously, and to maximize the benefits and minimize the challenges of their use. Before we started developing this resource, we reached out to national and international SCS Global partners, USAID missions and HQ staff, donors, and others from all regions of the world with an in-depth survey. We had about 170 people respond, about 2/3 of them from the field perspective. If you're not a technologist, you could, like me, feel really overwhelmed about where to begin learning more. The Internet of Things, sensors, robots and drones, smart cities, and broader topics such as social media, disinformation, big data, or the digital gender divide. CivicSpace.tech covers all of these. And for all of these topics, you'll learn about their relevance to civic space in clear, simple, easy to understand language, including a basic 101 glossary, like what's hashing, or neural networks, or self-sovereign identity versus portable identity, or what exactly is the Internet of Things. And is a smart city really smart? You'll learn about the opportunities for using automation or digital IDs and the risks as well. There's case studies from all of the sectors and areas we work in: elections, anti-corruption, economic development, even agriculture and food security, global health, and humanitarian contexts. The chapters clearly explain the opportunities for using each technology in our work, but understanding the risks is equally as important. And we dive into examples such as discrimination against marginalized groups with artificial intelligence, the risk of mass surveillance and stalking associated with drones, and the worsening inequality and marginalization concerns in the development of smart cities or 5G technologies. And a really awesome feature in each chapter is a list of questions to help you think more deeply about each digital technology and what you might consider before deploying it, and really, actually, if it's the most appropriate for the problem you're trying to solve and the work you're trying to accomplish. And because technology is so connected to everything we do in our world and our work, we show how responsible and thoughtful use of digital technology can help contribute to the realization of SDGs. It's also important to integrate the best practices into technology-enabled programs. And so we've connected the resource back to the principles for digital development as well.
Let's take a look at the site in this brief video. From the home page, you can search for topics you want to learn more about, or use the filters to discover solutions, trends, and threats relevant to your work. Simply choose your field, and a selection of suggested topics will appear. Refine the results by choosing Sustainable Development Goals or Principles for Digital Development. You can find more information on the SDGs and the principles via links on the individual topic pages or at the bottom of the home page. Anytime you want to start your search over, just click the Reset button. Each topic page covers what the topic is about and its impact on your work. Dive even deeper with the options on the right, including key questions to reflect on when exploring a technology, curated case studies of recent uses and issues, additional resources, references, and related topics. Expandable fields offer more context and information. Live links take you to original sources, while cogs signify links to other CivicSpace.tech topic pages. To get back to the home page, just click CivicSpace.tech at the top of any page. Everything you need to know, all in one simple, user-centric site, CivicSpace.tech.
Co-creation is not necessarily a new concept, but in recent years, USAID has expanded our use of co-creation as really one of our go-to tools. This is because we know that it can help us to more clearly identify development challenges, especially newer or emerging areas. And it helps us to better plan and design programs in order to address those challenges. So in these ways, the FHI 360 paper really is very salient. It's useful to USAID because it encapsulates the trends and the lessons from co-creation efforts that took place through global development programming. And while the cases in the paper are specific to civil society sector, the observations made are applicable across all of development sectors, really across much of our work. So, for example, it highlights the importance of timing and how co-creation can be used at various points or moments in the program cycle. And it also offers good thoughts on how co-creation can influence other critical program elements, such as the budget. And I thought it speaks really well to how co-creation fosters the building of strong relationships, of partnerships and networks, which are so important for program success. We know that we use co-creation in order to reach a consensus. So among this group of diverse stakeholders to get a way forward when we're designing the program. But the paper reminds us that it's as much about that outcome as it is about the entire process. So it's about the quality of that participation. It's about setting clear goals and then adapting and adjusting those as the process moves along. For me, the paper reminded that a critical aspect of using co-creation is that we manage expectations, because even though we're trusting this process, we don't know exactly where it's going. We don't know for sure how it's going to end up. So the paper is a tool that can help us to manage that uncertainty, and then in the end, get the most out of using this innovative approach.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Serini with Social Impact. Social Impact's tip sheets focus on several areas of inclusive development spanning the project cycle, many focusing on approaches to adaptive management in complex projects and environments. We chose to focus on these approaches because people often forget that they are prime opportunities to further capacity development and inclusion, rather than thinking of them solely for donor reporting. By measuring and planning for inclusion, we are better able to ensure it happens throughout the project cycle. The Inclusive M&E tip sheet explores the question of how M&E can further inclusion in a project and at the same time be more inclusive of marginalized groups during M&E processes. The Capacity Building Indicators for Civil Society Partners tip sheet is a guide to different types of indicators that might be used to measure capacity during 3 stages of organizational maturity. It also explores considerations for indicator development, including the inclusion of civil society partners in this process. 3 of the tips focus on approaches to adaptive management, defined by USAID as an intentional approach to making decisions and adjustments in response to new information and changes in context. By using a lens of adaptive management, implementers can plan for inclusion of all stakeholders in decision-making throughout the project lifecycle. The Adaptive Management tip sheet explores how adaptive management fits into a collaborating, learning, and adapting CLA approach, when it is appropriate to use this approach, the benefits of this approach, and how organizations and MEL systems can support the use of adaptive management. In the Learning Design tip sheet, we explore how to integrate learning approaches into implementation and in M&E systems using USAID's CLA framework. Project managers can use a learning approach to identify changing needs of the project and build M&E systems and activities to address these gaps and needs. A political economy analysis, or PEA, is a structured approach to examining power dynamics and economic and social forces that influence development, and helps development practitioners to guide adaptive management of programming efforts. The PEA tip sheet reviews the components of a PEA and how to apply this during the project cycle. We think the implementation tips will be useful for INGOs, the private sector, governments, and civil society partners as starting points to further inclusive development during different stages of the project cycle, particularly in complex environments. Thank you.